want to thank our speakers this morning and we have another panelist joining us over there at the end, and Colin Mason. I would like to start with you, Colin. Maybe you could introduce yourself and say a few words, actually, how you worked with ZF Group. As Gabriel mentioned that they work closely with you. You are one of the partners. Go ahead. Start speaking. Generally, you start. Hold it close to. Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, for those of you who don't know me, but I recognize many customers and partners in the room. I'm Colin Mason. I joined Microsoft kind of 15 years ago.
Please hold your mic a little bit closer. Yeah.
I joined Microsoft about 15 years ago, really with a view to manufacturing a more resilient and sustainable future, and doing that with a company that was really focused with a mission statement, which was, I think by now everybody knows that mission statement, but helping every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. And I don't have to tell people in the room, but I tend to be going to events, evangelizing manufacturing and manufacturing's role in everyday life and everything that we do, and the manufacturing heroes that kind of helped us get through the pandemic, whether they were automotive, kind of refactoring their factories to kind of make ventilators, or it was the ramping up of capacity to make the vaccines and the test kits. So I think that was really a shining moment, I think, for manufacturers, and it's become much easier to have that conversation, frankly, on the role that manufacturing plays in manufacturing a resilient and sustainable future. And I'm just happy to be on the panel today with a number of partners and customers, all of whom I work with, and of course, Gabriel, I think, shared that really we're all on this multi-year journey. I was looking, Gabriel, and we go back to 2018. I think I have a story of how we were working with ZF on some of the very first applications of HoloLens, actually, in factories. And so it is a multi-year journey, so very happy to be on that with you and some of the other customers in the room.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Callan. As I mentioned to you earlier, that we are going to start with a few questions, and then we will open the floor for questions from you, so you can, get your questions ready. I think this morning we learned sort of one thing, that every company is sort of at a different stage in their journey to digital transformation. And some companies actually, obviously, as Greg mentioned, is that, clearly, there are a lot of challenges because it's not really that easy task. And some companies are dealing with a lot of legacy systems they have and so forth. And certainly, oil and gas industry is one of the probably perhaps more difficult industry to transform because they have, so much legacy as well as actually a lot of safety issues and so forth. So maybe I could start with you folks, maybe talking a little bit about where your own companies, I'm sure, every company is going through this different stage. And if you could say a little bit, where do you think that your company is in your journey in this digital transformation? And obviously, as along Excel mentioned earlier, it's right now, it's not just digital transformation. We have to actually keep into mind, perspective, all these other things, sustainability and energy transition going on, and we have to keep those goals in mind. So maybe I could start with Alan, with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We have three major laboratories in Shell. We have one in Amsterdam, we have one in Houston, and we have one in Bangalore. And we're, as many know, we're a very technology-driven company in Shell. Whether that be production technology or actually engineering technology. And we have several folks here today that are part of the controls and digitalization, automation, cybersecurity teams. But we're on this transformation, and when you build a greenfield plant, like we did up in Pennsylvania, we just went to production with it, you're kind of afforded the luxury of having a new system, right? A new everything, right? When you're running a plant that's been there for 100 years, you sort of gotta deal with what you've got. But it's important, and I said it earlier, to manage the change. The digital twins are great unless they're fraternal, and then they're not so great. And I think about early days when you have technicians and you really want to know what the real drawing looks like. They pull the bottom drawer of their file cabinet out and say, okay, here's the red-lined drawing. and that becomes a fraternal twin, right? You don't have a digital model unless you really can manage the change. So, I think the big challenge in managing it is getting the operations and maintenance and field engineering folks to really embrace that for what it is and for what the value is, when it gets into the field. Because if you don't manage it properly, it becomes garbage. In fact, it goes worse than that. It becomes dangerous when you don't manage it properly. So I think that's really the state we're in. It's great. We've got all this advanced technologies, and I know Aspen Tech has been a part of that journey. I mean, a lot of companies here today have been a part of the journey with us. But how do we push it to a new sort of level by really embracing it and taking it into the field and making that field technician a believer that they'll never let the twin become fraternal. And simply put.
Well, thanks. Could we next maybe Axel? You go ahead.
Well, I would like to build on what Alan just said. The job is only done if we really connect the technology to the operation. So Siemens has a huge installed base in different industries in automation that has been growing over decades. And we do have great capabilities in all of the parts of digitalization, cybersecurity, simulation, plant engineering, software. The challenge that we have is we have to bring it together and we have to connect it. And this is why Siemens has launched a program that is called Siemens Accelerator. It's called Accelerator because we want to help our customers, our partners, to accelerate. And it needs to be a Siemens-wide program because we have to align and improve on our interfaces inside of the company, but we have to also open up because the challenge will not be met by one company alone, by by me saying I can provide all the tools that will help you. This is not true. This probably will not happen. You have an installed base. So we need to connect that. And talking about that, even though we're far away with software and with process automation and all of those stuff, on that journey, so that we really have it done and that Alan says, now it's going to help my people in the operation. And there's not the red line diagram in the drawer down there. And we really have that digital twin. It works, and it works for you guys in the operation. We're at the very beginning.
Thank you. Antonio?
Let me just, there you go. Just from a standpoint of a supplier of technology, we're a software company, so our carbon footprint is very tiny, and even though we're working on it, we just have to turn the lights off and we'll get to net zero carbon emissions quickly. But what, the interesting thing for us as companies have embarked on a net zero carbon emissions target since over the last 3-4 years is a lot of them started to declare these goals. And all of a sudden, what's been a technology that's been around for many, many years became even more popular, and that's multivariable process control. Because one, it certainly, as you make your operations more efficient, you reduce energy consumption, therefore you reduce emissions, and everyone wants to account for that reduction in emissions through technology. But to the point about digital twin, because I always say the digital twin is in the eye of the beholder, because everything or anything can be a digital twin, frankly. A model that you use in multivariable process control is a digital twin of a process unit. It's just that it's embedded in very sophisticated optimization technology. But it is when we introduced adaptive multivariable control, meaning control technology that read the deviations in the process. As the operating envelope of the process started to change, the technology kept pace with that change, and it stayed being the digital twin all along. There wasn't that need to maintain the twin, because the problem with technology that you applied in manufacturing processes is that these processes do evolve depending on the feedstock, on operating conditions, and so on. So the twin has to keep up with those changes. So the introduction of adaptive capabilities, and this is where I think artificial intelligence capabilities, machine learning, deep learning, will start to make a big difference on truly making the digital twin a reality. In Aspen Technology, we're working on sort of self-learning, self-sustaining technologies. Take what we learn from multivariable control and apply it to other technologies that use models, whether it's planning, whether it's scheduling, even production accounting applications as well. And ultimately, cognitive guidance through artificial intelligence capabilities. Everyone's talking about ChatGPT, but the real potential from that is how do you turn that into an instructor for users of technology going forward in order to truly drive sustainment, which is more important. One thing is capturing value or sustainability, the other thing is sustaining it, which really requires a lot of work. And that to me will be the real pivot in digitalization and the use of technology.
Yeah, good, thank you. Gabrielle, many companies wish they were where you are right now in your digital journey, making the plunge into digital native cloud platform manufacturing. What would you say your biggest challenge was? Maybe you could talk about a couple of challenges perhaps you companies have to overcome to really start journey like yours.
Clear. We can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. It's a good topic, the challenges. I think I've already discussed about one of those during the keynote, which is the budget. And you cannot, I was discussing with some people outside about precisely that topic. You cannot say that this digitalization journey comes into the normal budget of the company. It cannot be like that. You are transforming. And to transform, you need special points, special ways to finance, special ways to fund. And really, I tell you, you need to convince your top management to say, dedicate a part of the budget out of the normal budget of the company. If you give this just to the divisions, they have a P&L in our case, and they have to be accountable for that P&L. Well, I tell you from the experience, it will not really work, because they're going to cut some capex when they need. They're going to avoid to use all of it because they think they have other priorities, as we were talking about convincing teams and so on. So this is one of the most challenging topics that we have. Say, separate budget. Then second one is not a challenge about budget, is also say we work together. And here I have my colleague, Colin. They came together with us and they put a part of that budget also to help the starting point. It's not charity, because they're going to get a benefit out of that, but you need that also. You need a partner to develop your digitalization. So that one, the money, important. Second one, the skills. You don't have the skills, you will not do it. And is there snowball skills at the beginning might be very concentrated and focused on the basic development. So maybe 10 guys are enough at the beginning, but then you're going to need all of a team. And this team needs to be trained. And this team is not only, let's say, IT guys or maintenance guys, you need to bring also the complete people from all the complete teams from all the plants into that moment. And for that, we have developed several ways of doing it until we have found the right one. But we needed, as I mentioned before, hackathons. We were doing some hackathons where we brought teams free. Whoever wanted to come into that team, and during 3 days, we trained them to use simple things like Power Apps or Power BI to develop use cases under those. And you have to see how good use cases were developed. Something that even then they could not imagine that in 3 days they could do that, starting from zero. And then, of course, also we have started by giving every single person of 160,000 employees an email, access to Teams, access to simple basic information coming from the corporate, so that they feel that this revolution is not only happening for the corporate, it's not only happening for the top management, for the company, if you want to say it like that, it's also happening for them. They are part of the transformation.
Yeah.
Those are the basic
excellent
challenges.
comments. A lot of good nuggets there. Right now, as all of you know, that sustainability is at the forefront of everybody's mind and so forth. So where are you putting sustainability as you are trying to transform your businesses? Are you kind of making it under the umbrella of digital transformation, or how are you actually managing digital transformation at your companies? Maybe Gabriel, if you want to start, feel free.
Yeah. Got it before and now.
Yeah,
Is it okay?
Start speaking. Yeah.
Yeah. No, of course, we want to drive that together. That's what I call at the beginning, smart and green factories. They need to start like that. So the one that we are creating in Pančevo in Serbia is a new one. It's a greenfield. It's easier if you want, but we don't forget that sustainability must be driven also through digitalization. So we are now starting with simple use cases like digital monitoring of energy in each of our plants, because it's a basic point from the lean manufacturing, but it's a basic point also for any other topic in a plant. It's transparency. Bring all data clear to those needing to make the decisions, which are not us. Those making the decisions are in the plants. Those making the decisions are in the work, in the shop floor, and seeing what's happening. They are the ones that need to move all these operations, and they need to have the right data and transparency. And transparency, today is through the management of data coming out of our machines. It's not just like having the invoice from the energy supplier. That's a good starting point, but it's not enough, of course. So together, we're moving both things together, sustainability and digital transformation.
Great. Alan, would you like to comment?
Yeah, so we have this program called Blue Sky.
Yeah.
And Blue Sky drives the assets of the future, right? So what do we do in the assets of the future to enable ourselves to the transformation we're looking for? And, so I guess the approach for us has been, we're taking each one of the assets, it's not like every asset, we've already got a functional spec and everything's already designed and we're just doing it across every asset. What we're doing is taking major projects and saying, okay, for this asset, we're gonna first start with this. And if that works out great, then we'll share that across and actually standardize on that methodology. And as we do another plant, we may do the same thing, right? So we'll adopt the next technology and then so forth. So, I mean, it's a bit of a, it's either you shut everything down and start up afterwards, or it's take it piece by piece and ratchet it up to a point where you've got a global way of working. But I mean, to get, talking to the Blue Sky folks, it's kind of like, okay, you got to come down to earth for us to understand what it means, right? And they tend to be in the clouds, not in the stratosphere, and so what does the functional spec of digitalization or asset of the future or Blue Sky look like, right? And then we're trying to figure out what that is, and we're doing it piece by piece.
Okay, good. Let me maybe start with you, Excel. How I know you are working with a lot of your customers. How are your customers viewing, and also maybe you could comment on it at your own company. How are you managing it?
The sustainability.
Yeah.
Well, starting with our own company, of course, we have to look at our own plans and how can we reduce the energy consumption, the carbon footprint. That also means talking to our suppliers. A lot of our suppliers happens to be our customers on the other hand side. And how can we work together? We created a platform that is called Sea Green together with our suppliers in order to keep track and in order to facilitate, also to document the improvement and the status. What is the carbon footprint of the supply you're just getting today? By doing that, we also want to improve the carbon footprint of the products we are selling in that industry. So we have just, to give two examples, redesigned a new controller for DCS and our positioner and the instrumentation for the valves, and have significantly reduced the carbon footprint ahead of the market in doing that. And then how can we use digitalization in order to help our customers in the field of sustainability? And again, this is, there are different views on that. We have to look at green hydrogen because we don't get green energy all over the world. And there are a lot of places where we have to get that. And there are a lot of industries who have to get that. And we were all talking about transportation a lot, using new feedstocks or new energy topics. But we also have to talk about for the chemical industry specific in itself. The chemical industry globally is utilizing 8 percentage points of the oil and gas, of the oil consumption globally, and 12 percentage point of the gas consumption globally. And in both cases, half of it is for the energy generation and half of it is for the feedstock. So how can we help customers to be more flexible, using digitalization, being more flexible in using new feedstocks, making their plants more flexible to be able to use more feedstocks? How can we help them to reduce the energy consumption? In the worst case, how can we help them to move production from one place to the other? So it is a lot of topics. We need to, and I probably could go on, but I'm pretty sure that the colleague next to me has something to add to that as well.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Just a little bit, only a little bit. Well, I mean, again, we're a software company, so we have a very small footprint from our CO2 emissions. But what we do is we focused on our customers and really help our customers with their scope 1 and 2 emissions. We estimate that the global refining industry and those customers, those refiners that use our technologies, they create about $22 billion in value in their operations every year through the use of our products and solutions. But that same group of customers, through that benefit of value, they reduce their emissions by 16 million metric tons every year. So this is about efficiencies and optimization. So what do we do? Well, over the last 2 years, we've invested a lot more on developing application models in our products so that our customers become more familiar with the capabilities in our products that drive sustainability. Used to be that the only focus of refinery LP was really to optimize for an economic outcome. Well, we've always been able to optimize also for CO2 emissions. It's just that it wasn't that well known, or even no one was interested in that. So today our customers can also optimize a refinery plant for both economics and CO2 emissions. We're developing capabilities to not only model the production of hydrogen, but also the storage and transportation, the production of biofuels. Used to be a molecular characterization for oils. Now it is for vegetable oil, for cooking oil. What is the molecular characterization of cooking oil? Because depending on the temperatures that you process it at, it can actually turn into solids as well. So it's a new set of capabilities using the same products and solutions, but as they apply to renewables and to the energy transition. It's a different world, but like I said, it's the same physics, the same chemistry that rules the world, and we just focused on driving greater and greater capabilities.
Yeah. Hey, Colin, go ahead.
Yeah, just as you were talking there, and I think you said it twice, you're a software provider and you've got a small footprint. Well, we don't have a small carbon footprint. I think you've been to our data centers, right? So I think 3 or 4 years ago, we actually had the Xbox team actually talking about their manufacturing and supply chain. We should probably ask the Azure team to come and talk about our data center supply chain, because that's massive. And so I look at sustainability from a couple of different angles, right? One is we are a manufacturer and we do operate a pretty complex supply chain. Many of you have some of our devices, or your kids may have some of those devices in the case of Xbox. But then we do also provide a lot of tools, as we are concentrating a lot of the computing capacity in the world in those data centers. That itself has a huge impact on sustainability. And what we do for our customers there is make it easy for them by providing the tools to actually model, and I believe we just did this for Xbox as well, where you can see the carbon impact of downloading a particular game and playing that game. But for all of your workloads that you're moving to the cloud, we provide that. But beyond that, actually at Hanover Messe just gone, back in June, we actually announced the general availability of the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability. And in there, and we launched it at a manufacturing event, right? For hopefully obvious reasons that we talked about it earlier. The huge impact that manufacturers and energy providers have on that carbon footprint. So we've made commitments in terms of carbon neutral, water positive, 2030 for Microsoft itself. But a lot of our effort is going into providing the right tools. So the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, there's a sustainability manager there that allows you to start meeting all of those data capture requirements. And we're actually now into scope 3, not all of scope 3, but we've started actually introducing some of the capabilities for capturing your scope 3 emissions. So we're trying to take what we've done with our data center, because we actually have a program there to actually recycle everything in our data centers. And so we've taken a lot of that best practice and our learnings in working with various customers on what they need to actually make progress on their sustainability objectives. So it's a combination of us trying to be responsible from a sustainability perspective with our own carbon footprint, but also provide the learnings and the tools really to not just manufacturers, but that's a key focus for us, is actually manufacturing.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's see if we have questions out there. Please raise hands. Yeah, I see a hand up here. Please raise your hands. Then one of our ARC person will bring a mic to you. Yeah, any questions over here? Please, don't be shy. Yeah.
Hi, Amol Busari
please state your
Wood
name
here.
If you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Come.
Amol Busari with Wood here. So questions more focused for Alan and Gabriel here. So let's say I'm a young project manager in an elevator with my CEO, trying to justify my digital transformation program. What would be 1 or 2 words that I would use?
Well, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Well, I would say when I arrived into my company at ZF was early 2020, and all this digitalization process was just starting, end of 2019. The first thing is to have a very clear strategy of what you want to do in the next 10 years. Clear strategy, so that you show, before even going into budgets and so on. Colin mentioned it, we started to work together already in 2018. We had, some numbers on the table. Those numbers were also done with the third partner that we had, PwC, to see, okay, what's the factory intelligence that
tips, especially with intentionality. But the question is, as you move toward that balanced hybrid, if you will, way of working, how are you helping initiate that change? Like, it's hard, right?
Yeah.
So what are you guys doing to
That's what I
ease
thought
it?
your question was
Yeah.
more, because I don't subscribe to never seeing each other, right? It is, people have to learn. You typically will get in a telecon because there's a deliberate topic that you have to really wrestle to the ground with a few folks, and everybody's coming for that purpose. But when's the last time somebody called you up and says, hey, I just want to talk to you about my career, right? You tend to do that at the coffee machine. You tend to see that when you see people. So what we're doing is we're not telling people they have to go back to work. We're offering that they should, because it's great. But maybe 3 days a week, and maybe bookend Mondays and Fridays where you work at the house or whatever. That way, because people over the course of 2.5 years have established a different life, right? And I look at my 20-something 7-year-old son, my oldest, it's second nature for him to be at a screen and not in his factory, right? And for me, that doesn't compute, but it's going to have to compute. And so it's a matter of, going a couple of days a week at home, 3 days a week face to face. That to me is a model that's probably more sustainable. I do think folks need to do a stint in the assets, and you can't hear a machine screaming on your Videocon, and you certainly can't smell it. Right? Maybe in the future, you folks are pretty clever, but you can't smell a machine burning up from your house, right? So people need to spend time in the plants, right? So.
As you'd anticipate, I have a few thoughts on this. We've done a lot of research, and we do a lot of ongoing research on the new era of whatever we want to call it, hybrid work. But I still see, guess what? Microsoft still has people that has to go into our factories, right? The data centers. It's not a one size fits all. We work with lots of manufacturers, and a lot of what they're doing is, yes, there's actually opportunities in some cases where engineers that may have left can now work from home, and you've got time to transfer those skills, right? But you still have the frontline worker that actually has to go in, and again, opportunities to think about it as, hey, they can get remote assistance now. They can actually, so it's a key scenario that we see really taking off in manufacturing in particular, that connection between the engineer who is in short supply and maybe a young technician or operator that hasn't seen that problem before, hasn't heard that engine. So we don't quite do smell-o-vision or any of those features on Teams yet, but there are ways that you can at least give the sound or give the video remotely. But in many cases, that needs someone with experience, and that is, I think, the opportunity partly to close the skills gap, right? Because we touched on it, but it's also different skills that people are looking for now, right? We still need engineers, we still need people with qualifications, but now there's data, AI, more robots, and guess what? Robots need to be tuned and maintained, and so the skill profiles are changing as well, right? So I'm with you. I don't believe in 100% virtual work. I don't think there's going to be many lights out factories. I think another analyst likes to use that term. I think there's very few of those that are going to be true lighthouse factories. But work has changed forever, right? As a result of the pandemic.
No,
Gabriel, go ahead. And the way
So-
these mics work, you just start speaking
Okay.
but hold close to the mic. Yeah.
Okay, I'm impatient always. No, what you both are mentioning, and I'm 100% with what you're saying. And Colin, you said remote helps or assistance, and that's very important. We are trying to sell our people that their skills, because people are afraid also of this revolution. When you go to a plant, oh, what's going to happen? Like with robots and so on. But one of the things that we're trying to tell them, don't worry. You're not going to be fired, whatever. You're just going to change your skills. Instead of being the troubleshooter, you're going to be a data scientist. Okay, you're going to analyze. You're going to go with condition monitoring to forecast when your machine is going to break down, so you are not waiting for that moment, you're just taking action before. And that's good. We're also selling augmented reality, which is very important. And that could be merged into teams to say, okay, with the remote guys, the remote assistants, just showing the machine via Teams, you see what's happening there. And that can save money also, because you can pool people. So it's not just like home office or whatever. You have a pool of people in one area, in one tech center or whatever, able to help lots of plants around the world. And then just the frontline worker finally is the one that is moving, touching, and whatever. But at the end, why don't we dream that our machines would probably not have any more problems because we were able to forecast that? I'm just dreaming. It's not going to happen, as you say, Colleen and Ellen. Not it's going to happen in the next 10 years, 10, 20 years. But In the future, yes. And I'm a guy that always think that we have to have a North Star. We have to look to what's going to happen in the future to profile our strategy. So those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you. I think we have a question over there.
Hi, my name is Louis Macon. I work for a company called Pinnacle Reliability. And I have a question specifically for Alan and Colin and also Gabriel. So I think all of us in this room agree that change is coming, change is here, change is now. One of the biggest challenges that I get pushed back on is the speed in which we change. Can either of you talk to your experiences and how you manage that throughout, new projects, new industries, maybe Shell's pivoting from oil and gas to green energy? How quickly should you do that? And is there any guidance you can speak to on that topic? Thank you.
Okay, who wants to start? Go ahead, Gabriel.
I go again. I don't know. It's working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And I would say speed is up to you to set up that speed. My experience is don't try to run, then you will fall. Do it step by step if you want to have a clear point, but start. I always, when I go to the plants, and I always take that little machine out of my pocket. Just imagine it was 13 years ago, or 15 years ago, when we started with the smartphones. And nobody came to your houses, to your offices, to teach you how to use them. But you cannot imagine the world anymore without them. It was step by step. So this is the same for our companies. This is the same for our plants. You have to start right now, define the strategy, of course, define your own speed based on your budget and your resources. And then you will see it comes alone. Because people working with us, they're used to those things, they're native digital. They will come asking you not to help them, but to bring them the necessary resources and the necessary money and the good ideas to do it. They would say, why are not we doing the things this way? Why are we so old-fashioned? So they will be pushers. Enable them to develop themselves, and you will develop the strategy that you need in your company.
Yeah, excellent. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, Shell's got a commitment that, we're going to, as a consequence of our business, and that's scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, we'll go to net zero by 2050. And you may think, wow, that's a long time from now, huh? But if you look at the energy system and you deal with feedstocks, you deal with all sorts of stuff, it's not easy to move as quick as a lot of folks really want you to move, right? And you have to have a business model where you basically are able to develop that energy system over time, right? So with that ambition of 2050, what does that look like, for the here and now, right? So is it, you talked about waste oil, vegetable oils, you talked about, woody biomass that goes into biofuels. If you thought, I mentioned in a speech earlier about this dairy farmer. He's got contracts with cheese companies because of the fact that he's got a sustainable angle to his business, right? That's a big demand, isn't it? And of course, businesses are founded on demand, right? You make money because you have a demand for your products. I'm acquainted with a lady that runs technology for Boeing. Boeing, I don't know if Boeing's represented in a room, but they have an aspiration to go to sustainable aviation fuel in a world where they can only get 3% of it that they really want, right? So the demand is there. Are the feedstocks there? Are our systems there? Our ability to change from a crude refinery to a biofuels plant? Since the early 90s, we've been trying partial oxidation conversion through POX of woody biomass, of tires, of all sorts of things. To scale up on a commercial level, is virtually impossible in some of these businesses, right? The cement industry takes every bit of tires that comes off of every car, right? That's already a given. Well, that's probably a big carbon emitter. So what do you do in the cement industry or in aviation or in marine to decarbonize their systems so that they get off of that, right? So that they get off of that heavily, emitting technology into a sustainable. So it's circular, right? So the old companies that used to burn tires now don't burn tires, and they use alternatives, and we may take tires and actually inject the CO2, right, and create a cleaner energy system as a result. But it's not easy. It's hard to push the industry and understand how you can get enough woody biomass. I mean, you think about forest fires. What causes forest fires? Overgrown thatch. You can't dethatch thousands of acres or millions of acres in a sustainable way. Well, how does that look in the future? Do we have a business case where we can dethatch millions of acres and prevent forest fires and make aviation fuel out of that, right? So there's all sorts of things at play. But
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was talking with John Dake from SESME, right? And we were kind of reminiscing about, I don't know if John's in the room somewhere, but we were talking about there's at least 9 different styles of manufacturing. So it's tough to generalize, right? We've got some big companies here, but we work with companies of all sizes, and it's a combination of culture, vision, kind of their particular style of manufacturing and the business they're in. What are the pressures? But then across all of them, and I think this may be where the question was coming from, there are some common use cases, right, where you can see you can accelerate digitalization, and guessing that you were thinking about things like predictive maintenance and condition monitoring, which can kind of be applied fairly, and that is one of the most common use cases that we see. Quality is another one where really you're starting to see the application of AI really to do that more rigorous automated quality inspection. And so there's a few of these use cases that apply across all those different styles of manufacturing that I think are the ones that are going to scale quickly, be repeatable, where there'll be not quite out-of-the-box solutions, because that's very tough to do, but certainly highly repeatable or relatively low cost to get business value. But I think that was a great question, and you don't have to be the size of Shell or Siemens or ZF to get started. You can actually get started in a lot of those digitalization efforts with some of those use cases.
I just want to add, one of the things that I see when I meet customers and we evaluate their adoption of technology, which is digitalization, is the capabilities and capacity, both the skills and numbers of individuals in those organizations that can actually be deployed to implement technology and digitalization. And we believe that's one of the biggest frictions to adoption of technology for Aspen Tech. Organizational excellence plays a big role in digitalization because it's the capabilities, the skills, the capacity. In this transition to new industries, new renewable technologies, capacity, number of people available to implement these technologies will also be an issue. And there's very little conversation about that because these are new skills and new technologies that require learning and education around them, and there isn't enough people yet. And in my opinion, one of the biggest frictions to accelerate the transition will also be people, the availability of people in this transition. We're all very busy doing what we were doing with hydrocarbons or old technologies. That shift to new technologies will require a whole new set of individuals with knowledge and skills that don't exist today.
Okay. Let me maybe put it in a little bit different context. Right now, first of all, younger generation. Clearly, younger generation is more anxious to move it faster. And certainly some countries, right now we are seeing that Europe has to move faster. They are moving faster and so forth. So that's other way to look at it. Now, most of senior people, like some of us sitting here, are going to be retiring. And as younger people are coming to our industry, how do we also absorb them? How do we train them? Right now, it's like we've been talking about earlier, you have to really be in the factory, you have to really see the machine, you have to hear and touch and all of those kind of things. So we have to kind of, bring the younger generation, and hopefully also, they have ideas to move faster as well. Go ahead, Axel.
Well, to start with, it is not so easy to attract the right people from the younger generation. We have a war of talents out there, I think. So, and let's face it, we do have to change, and we do also have to change our organization. And it starts with a culture, because the culture we have in our corporations, in our companies, is going to have an impact on the organization we find, and the organization is going to have an impact on the products we develop, and all of that is going to have an impact how attractive we are for the greatest talents we could get. And we have to get the talents in order to get the right products, but we also have to adapt in our mind, in our culture, in order to attract them, to keep them, and to provide the ground for them to be most effective. I cannot just get the greatest talents I possibly get and put them, in a very old structure where we want to continue in increments what we've done for 20 years. I have to create a new environment where young people are heard, and where we have small teams, where we go more agile, where we listen to the people, where we try to delegate the responsibility, down as much as we can in order to move faster. And we have to try different things in parallel. Don't put all the eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead, Colin.
Colin, just to build on what Axel said, look, there's two things that customers are telling us now. Is not give me the 32nd decimal point in the optimization algorithm. It is no longer relevant. What customers are telling us, we need your products to be simpler to use. And it is because someone said it, is a new generation of users, engineers, that are used to the iPhone. 2 clicks and an answer. I wonder what happened a million years ago. Ask Google, they get an answer. And they want that same experience in the products that they use in the plant. So customers are telling us, simplify the user experience. And it starts with deployment through to then sustainment. Not only the implementation and use, but how do we sustain the use of these capabilities? And the second thing that has become more and more of a theme is the hyperscalers have done a great job getting us to move all of our data to the cloud, and we have these massive data lakes, but that data, no one knows how it's related to each other, the quality of the data, is it incomplete, how is it structured, and so on. So they cannot use the data for insights. So they're asking us, how can you help us bring order to all this data so that we can actually leverage the data? And this is why we've introduced our own DataWorks business unit and our emission capabilities. So those are two challenges that are going to face industry going forward, is a new generation of users that don't have the manufacturing expertise, and therefore we need to automate knowledge in the products and make these products simpler to use, but also quality of data. And that's a big challenge.
Go ahead, I'll call it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're going to build on this theme, but I think I saw metaverse, I think, on your slide, right? And I'm going to go there, right? Whether you agree with the word and that it's really new and different from digital twins or not, right? I think part of the challenge is actually making manufacturing attractive to address that skills gap. So that's one thing I think where we see technology, but I 100% agree with you, Antonio, on it's just got to be simpler. The apps themselves have to be more intelligent, more intuitive, right? I think we're all aligned on that. We're all striving for that. Some of what Gabriel has been doing, and some other customers like I'm thinking of Johnson Controls, but also Centrica and others in your industry, have really been using the Power Platform, low-code, no-code approaches so that actual business people, engineers, operators can actually build apps without having to go to an IT person. Still needs to be controlled, right? So I don't want to scare IT people, but still under tight control, but really leveraging and actually providing new skills and new opportunities for people in manufacturing that actually understand the domain. And so I think there's a combination there of we've got to build more intelligent applications and capabilities as technology and software providers, but also those I was a little bit disappointed. We did a survey with ARC. Low code, no code was relatively low, but it seems to be more awareness, right? Because we have seen more and more customers really starting to apply low code, no code and tap into their citizen developer community. I'm not sure if that's where you were going to go, but...
Yeah, more or less. But I didn't want to forget that it's not only about external customers, it's also about, and very much about our internal customers in this transition. And our internal customers are those you're mentioning, manufacturing guys. First of all, because there are new generations arriving, so they will ask to move in a different way, but also because those already there, they will say, hey, we need this and this way because we want to do the 2 clicks of the smartphone. That's why I was commenting with somebody outside. We were discussing about these things between IT and OT. And I was saying, when you create your product teams, when you do that, please always bring what we could call the Chief User Experience Officer to that. Not, of course, at that level, but just saying the product owner must be someone coming from manufacturing, someone that understands perfectly well what the needs are, and also that is discussing with the people in the plant. They say, hey, we need this. This is old-fashioned. We want this the new way.
Good. Thank you. Let me see if any questions out there, folks.
Andy, let me add to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I think that's really true. I mean, I'll give you a story, and you mentioned Xbox. It made me think. You know, I was in Asia and visiting a shipyard. We were building something called the bully rigs, and these were deep water class drill ships. And, you know, but they were 3/4 the size, the most advanced technology drill ships on the planet. And I went up to the control center where the driller sits, and I saw 2 Xbox paddles with a beautiful Corinthian leather seat, and I'm looking at at these things and going, that looks like my kid's Xbox paddles, right? And they said, well, that's because they are. And we licensed that, and we reduced our training by like 3/4 because every kid knows how to play Xbox, right? So the 20-somethings that became drillers actually didn't have to worry. They knew every button and, you know, and thing on the little joystick or what have you. But that's an example of how do we use technology that we're acquainted with and comfortable with, whether it be an iPhone or whether that be an Xbox paddle, and really transform our businesses knowing that people are comfortable in that space.
If folks, any
Andy.
questions over there?
Andy,
Yeah,
right
yeah,
here.
yeah.
We have-
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Steve Banker, ARC. I was really interested in what Gabriel talked about as a change in budgeting to drive sustainability. And, you know, it seems to me if you want to say the C-level is really buying into this, it has to happen at the budgeting level for these long-term capital expenditures. Any ideas on what would be best practices in budgeting to help with sustainability? And, you know, I realize companies still need to make money.
Well, I will tell you just my experience. When I was still in Renault Nissan for other topics, not precisely sustainability, but we were developing a program called hyper-competitiveness. Hyper-competitiveness meaning we went to the board of management, we explained then we need to take that out of the divisions or the regions. In this company it was the regions, and we need to put that in a common budget for the corporate. And the corporate, without being able to spend the money, the corporate will take the decision of where to put the money. So if you've got plant by plant, and you've got that for your region, your division, or whatever, and you say, okay, you split it, and every plant gets just 1/10 of it, maybe they are going not to be able to do everything they wanted. But if the money is controlled and the corporate view, then we can put the eggs in the right basket. And we say, no, we take that from you because here there's a great idea. That's a way that now in ZF we want to develop the same, not only for sustainability, but also for digitalization. Not to split the budget into many small parts. I understand that apart from what I was saying before, that we need to convince the board that a special budget is needed, we also need to say to the divisions and to the plants, please allow us to tell you where to put it. Because we have the holistic view of the company and we know what others are doing or not doing. And then you can develop or not. This is how I see it now, Rob.
Okay, good. Anyone else comment? Okay, yes, yes. Okay, let's see, I think we have a question over there.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, I'm Amanda Ahrens. I work at Dow and I'm an ESG data architect. And so kind of a follow-up question to what you were just talking about with discussing implementation and rollout in Dow, we've talked about how a huge barrier is resource time for appropriate training, because especially at the plants, because people are already so busy fighting fires, sometimes literally. And so it's like, how do you actually get the value case to get the budget for additional resources to help temporarily, if that's what you do? Do you have examples of that? And who maybe pays for those additional resources temporarily? I mean, I'm thinking this is similar to like turnarounds, right? We already know we need to do that kind of thing there, but it doesn't necessarily always come up when it comes to technology rollouts.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, look, the only thing I would say to me is always about prioritization. Does the organization prioritize training for their employees, for their teams? We have all sorts of training around ESG matters, and it is a priority and it's a requirement that everyone takes it, and we know it's going to take a couple of hours, every individual taking those courses to make sure that we are addressing unconscious bias in the organization or whatever it is. So what are the priorities that are being set for people in the plant around the training that they are required to have to make sure that they can do their jobs better? And in our case, we're very focused on delivering those training capabilities to our customers so that they embed it within their own training curriculum. And Dow yourselves actually do a very good job with our own training curriculum being embedded as part of your own training development program. So
I would like to build on that. I think the challenge will be even bigger in the future because we will see even more change. So investing in training facilities and also training software will be very beneficial, not only for the new employees, but because also the employees you have for several years will have to train on new operational regimes. They need to train on different scenarios that we will take a look at as we go along and as we go through the whole digitalization, and as we have to cope with all of the decarbonization and with all of the changes that will come with that. So I think you have a challenge. Yeah, it's not only about additional personnel, it will also be about having the software and having the training tools in order to help you, but not only the new people, but also the existing people there.
Organizational excellence. There needs to be equal focus on organizational excellence as there is on operational excellence.
I just would add one thing or two. We had the same problem. I'm not going to tell you it's easy. It's about prioritization, it's about organization, but there is also one thing. Those wanting to survive, and I'm talking about the workers, they will take care of learning. We are helping them creating what we call the academies. We've done an academy for e-mobility so that everyone can understand why we are developing these things. And we are creating now another academy for sustainability and for digitalization. So those academies are, first of all, things that are developed for self-training. So when they have the time, and now I'm mixing both concepts, so I want to survive, I want to go on in my career, I take the time to do those. And after that, then I decide maybe if I need more, to ask for more. So it's important also that we provide, and this is one specific program I talked about before, this digital enablement of the workforce, giving them access to the systems and making them a big part of the revolution. So there is no magic potion. Huh?
Yes, and I think it's probably worth talking about the role that maybe PwC has played in the relationship as far as thinking about change management, right? And you're talking about a lot of change here, right? And so making sure that we put together the programs, it's not just training, right? You are asking people to go into new roles, new jobs, new ways of doing things. So there's it goes beyond training, and a lot of what we're trying to do is with the tools that they use every day, make it easier to develop and deliver that training, right? We're not delivering all the content, but we're just trying to make it easier to get access and enable that delivery of that. But I think the change management process has to think about that delivery of training.
Okay, I think we just have a few more minutes. It looks like we have a question here. Let's see if we can take one quick one here. Go ahead, sir.
Sure, yes. Hi, Don Williamson, Westlake Corporation. Gabriel, I like your Chief User Experience title. I think I'm going to put that on my business card. Now I just have to figure out how to get the C-level compensation to come along with it. But anyway, the people, process, and technology approach that we talk about, the human factor in my mind is really at the heart of this digital transformation journey, right? But I think there's a tendency to want to accelerate all these great digital technologies to, as we deploy them, to improve all of our processes in all the functional areas. Unfortunately, the user adoption is not accelerating at the same pace. So my question is twofold, and it may be more for Axel, Alan, and Gabriel. Have you all dedicated specific resources around change management? And really to help answer the question, I think, Axel, you may have brought this up, of what's the purpose of why we're doing this? And also the fundamental question regarding what's in this for me? Thank you.
I start. The short answer is yes. If we want to fill the purpose, we do have to constantly develop the organization, the company we work in and we work for, and and this is why we do have change agents. This is why we have learning organizations. This is why we have dedicated people who help us change, especially on the transition to a more agile workforce. And this is not only the PLM process. This is also going into sales. So we are changing, we are going more agile, we have change agents and learning organizations who are dedicated for that.
Alan?
Yeah, I think we also, in our labs, we also have our engineering centers, right? So we dedicate resources based on, what the scope of what we're doing looks like. And a little bit to the question earlier, I mean, I like what Gabriel mentioned, have a dedicated budget, right? If everybody gets to choose, nobody does, right? So if every project gets to choose whether they want to do digitalization or not, nobody's going to pick it because there's always something better to do, right? So if you get an isolated budget and you get a head office charter to go after it, right, with a dedicated bunch of resources, there's no shortage of people that want to do this stuff because it's a lot cooler and sexier and everything else. But without money, you can't turn on anything, right? So I think I like the idea. In fact, it's so true. If you don't have a dedicated, kind of head office driven thing with resources and budget, it tends to struggle and it takes a lot longer. Huh? So you got to make believers of the people that are the budget holders, and that's the trick, isn't it?
Gabriel?
Yeah, nothing else to add to what Axel and Ale were saying. Yes, dedicated resources, depending on the size of the company. I was making a rough calculation before. Maybe one guy, well, there's a minimum base, 2-3 persons dedicated to that. But after that, every 1,000 people, you can put one more guy.
Okay.
That's how we are working.
Okay. I think maybe that's a good place for us to leave. Please join me giving hand to our panelists. Yeah, thank you so much. Yes. Yeah. And our lunch is...